baseball.
This is the Redbird Report with sports director Wiese and Bob Ramsey.
Powered by Rawlings and the Rawlings Experience
On the Big 550 KTRS.
Welcome in, everybody. It's the Rawlings Redbird Report on the Big 550 KTRS and our KTRS digital platforms. Remember, if you're watching our video, click the like button. That helps a bunch. And subscribe to our brand new relaunched KTRS TV on YouTube. And you can find all of our great videos from the Rawlings Redbird Report. I know Heidi and Rammer and Josh have their Mike Ward segments with Mike and all of the tremendous comings and goings on the Heidi Glaus show that you can see on KTRS TV as well. I want to welcome Bob Ramsey in. Rammer, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're watching. How are you?
Good to see you, my friend.
We are into spring training. That's great news. And we've got baseball to talk about. We've actually got results. And as folks watch this, you might be watching a little later in the week from when we're actually recording this. But one of the headlines I know we wanted to start the show with today, Rammer, is something we've talked about already this year. And it's already, the dominoes are starting to fall. And that's a report by MLB.com's John Denton about the potential status of Michael McGreevy. And Rammer, playing your Nostradamus role very early here in the spring, you talked about performance versus pay. What is a guy making, and how does that impact the decisions of the ball club as to how maybe a younger guy like McGreevy, who's not under a big contract yet, how that could impact his availability with the team?
Yeah, Brendan, what's interesting about it is, and I get when you've got these big contracts and you'd like to move them. I mean, that's no secret, right? So how do you move a contract if the guy's not pitching and hopefully performing so you can move him? Because if you say, well, McGreevy's better than, pick a guy. And I'm not trying to pick on Michaelis or Matz or anybody else for that matter who's making decent money. How do you put the guy in there at the league minimum and pitch him and then not pitch the other guys? It is a conundrum. It really is. However, I think most fans would say if you're really trying to win games, that it's not a rebuild. The Cardinals adamantly deny it's not a rebuild. Well, if it's not a rebuild and you're trying to win games, why aren't you playing your best guys? And it is problematic. It's not an easy answer. I think some of us want to have a knee-jerk reaction and say, well, it's too bad. You signed the bad contract. You got to eat it. That's not really real life. But we do want to see the Cardinals win games. And if McGreevy in March, the month of March, can earn a spot and is better than other candidates and at least finishes performance-wise in the top 5 of the starters, shouldn't he be a starter? We always talk about work ethic, work reward, all those kinds of things. So it is going to be an issue to follow. Now, here are a couple things that can happen. What if Matz and Michaelis are lights out, and what if McGreevy's just okay? Well, the problem will solve itself. So I'm not saying that the Cardinals are wrong and, we got to pound the table just yet. But John Denton pointed it out today, and I think he's right, and it's time to, and we should keep an eye on that as we move forward.
And in a sense, Rammer, if McGreevy does outperform those guys, the Cardinals almost contradict themselves on multiple levels. One being, like you said, that this isn't a reset or a rebuild, that you're still ultimately trying to win. Well, if McGreevy's your best arm and he's your answer to winning more ball games, he's got to go out there and play. And then on a second level, Rammer, haven't they told us about player development? I mean, they've told us about player development for years, and for a while it really was a staple of this organization, and it's fallen off now. But if you're going to block Michael McGreevy for a couple of guys that aren't in the long-term plans, like, I get it, there's money attached to both Michaelis and Matz, but it's not like they're signed to multiple-year deals. I mean, they're both, after this year, coming off the books.
Yeah.
So to me, their pay, as like you said, it's a conundrum, but it's one that they should be able to bypass.
I agree.
Again, if those two things we mentioned are really actually priorities.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we'll see how it goes. Again, performance, you'd like to have performance to be at least a factor that is considered. Does it change what you end up doing? Maybe, maybe not. So we got to see how it plays out in that regard on the performance side.
And for both Mets and for Michaelis, like I could see scenarios where they both pitch well, don't you? I mean, I don't think they're.
I don't wish them ill,
Yes.
certainly.
Yeah, and Michaelis at times last year looked like one of your better starters, but he was as hittable as he's been since maybe being a Cardinal. We've talked about Steven Matz.
I didn't see it that way with Michaelis. For a while, you could argue that he was the worst starting pitcher in the big leagues. But then when you start to go back now and do a little bit deeper dive, he couldn't get the outs he needed when he was around the plate. He didn't walk people, which is a great sign.
That's a very good sign.
It's a great thing. So if he can get a little more command and placement, yeah, I'm not against him. He had a horrible year by virtually any standard. Was he the worst? No, he was not the worst. But you can't just get beat around like that, start after start after start, and be okay.
No, I think we're on the same page with him. I just don't think we're that far removed from him being decent.
Yeah.
Not last year, but not that long ago either. And even when he's bad, like he can pitch you deep in the ball games. I don't think that's as much a priority as it used to be. Certainly doesn't do you much good if you're pitching 6 innings and giving up 6 runs. Where's the value in that? I really don't see it. So
right.
That's a big story. That's something we'll certainly be following, and it's top of mind for us as we begin our show today. And the first topic we actually had listed for today, and what an impact this young man made over the weekend. And there's so many things I want to talk about when it comes to J.J. Weatherholt, who comes across as a very impressive young man, drafted in the top 10 last year out of West Virginia. Immediately, Rammer, I mean, he has not been a big league prospect for more than 6 or 7 months in terms of actually being in a major league organization. Like, he was a prospect at West Virginia, but now he's just barely 6-7 months into professional baseball. He's already like in the top 25 prospect rankings around baseball. That's pretty difficult to do. And to see that home run on Sunday opposite field, I mean, the guy looked like a 50 home run hitter in the way he went to the opposite field. I'm not saying that's what he's going to produce, but the swing was powerful, a loud noise off the bat. Man, what a pretty strong announcement by J.J. Weatherholt saying, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to go.
I like the base hit as much as the home run. Don't get me wrong. Home runs are awesome. It was a good swing. He went the opposite way. But a guy who's going to make contact, because sometimes you see kids not quite ready for prime time, and they're taking wild swings and that sort of thing. But that wasn't him. He was locked in. And it was awesome to see. And they've got him right now earmarked for high A ball, and that'll probably be the case. But again, as March unfolds and he gets more at bats, could a guy jump from rookie ball to double A? I don't know if you do that right away, but he looks like a guy who could make a fast rise through the system.
It is not unusual, Rammer, by today's baseball standards, to see a guy drafted the year before and then make his big league debut the following season. Now, I don't know where that would land, and I think for Weatherholt to somehow land on the big league roster this year, some catastrophic things would probably have to happen. So I in that regard, I don't wish it, but it is not unusual, and I should amend it. It's not unusual to see college draft picks that are a little more polished, and in some cases, a lot more polished than the high school prospects that get taken in the same draft. Those guys may be 3 or 4 years away from making a dent. Like with Weatherholt, if it's not this year, I'd say 2026 would be a reasonable ETA for JJ Weatherholt. But there's some runway there's some runway for him here to start to make some rumblings and maybe speed up that time process.
This time of year, I keep harping on performance, and as a earmarked for high A, and it's up to him to outperform that expectation, and see if he does. I mean, we see first round picks that don't move quickly and stagnate along the way, completely unexpectedly. So I don't know which is going to be him. Maybe it'll be a more methodical rise through the organization, but you see a kid get off to a good start. It's great to see.
I remember talking with our old colleague Ben Fredrickson about this last summer, about some fair comps for JJ Weatherholt, and really having not seen him play all that much. You just talk about body type, the fact that he's a left-handed hitter, the fact that he brought pretty great athleticism to the table. Watching his home run swing yesterday, Randall, kind of putting you on the spot here, because I had a lot of names just sort of running through my head with that swing, because that, like I said, that was a power hitter's swing, taking that ball to left center field. Is there anybody he reminded you of?
No. However, since you asked the question, I'll just throw out Corey Seager because of the position.
Interesting. Seager would be an interesting name. But I got to tell you, like his swing, I've got to do a deeper dive and go because it looked like the kind of swing that doesn't necessarily equate to a middle infielder. And I'm probably getting over my skis a little bit here. And I think analysis this week on Weatherholt is there's going to be a lot of similarities and people probably getting a little too excited too soon. But that left-handed stroke, hitting it to the opposite field for power, I think there's, again, I think to me, I can almost look for a power hitter as opposed to a shortstop or middle infielder. Granted, there's plenty of shortstops and middle infielders who have turned into power hitters over the last few years. So that wouldn't be unusual.
Yeah, and the left-handed hitting shortstops, that's why Seager popped into mind. But
yeah,
if he strikes out 5 times in a row, are we going to come back and apologize next week?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I don't think he will. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun ride to watch. I don't know what's going to happen with the guy, but as a first-round pick, as a 7th pick of a draft, he's got a chance to be a rapid riser. It's up to him.
And I'll add this in there as well. I also think it's fair for all of us to be skeptical in how the Cardinals develop this young man, because there's not a great track record. Here's the funny thing, and we've talked about guys like Brendan Donovan especially, but Donovan, Tommy Edman, and Weatherholt kind of falls into that category a little bit of these guys that can play a bunch of different positions, very versatile. But it seems to me, Rammer, the Cardinals have more luck, recent memory, in developing some of the under-the-radar guys than they do the highly touted prospects.
Well, like Brendan Donovan was a 7th-round pick.
Right, exactly.
But I don't know if that is a testament to the Cardinals or to him, because we're both huge fans of his heart, toughness, leadership, work ethic. So I don't want to give too much credit or too much discredit either way. But when you look at a 7th-round pick, an 8th-round pick like Newt Barr coming along, I think the ones to watch, though, more importantly, a couple of 1st-round picks like Walker and Gorman, a couple of 2nd-round picks like Wynn and Burleson. We'd all say Wynn's done pretty well to this point. Walker and Gorman, the jury's out, up and down. 2 guys that have been kind of yanked around a little bit. Burleson, we'll see. So I don't know if you can put a blanket over the whole group or not.
I don't know if you can. And I think for me, it's just a matter of hoping he finds that right path, and almost in a way that they let him just be JJ, right? Just let him be the guy that he's been so far in his college career. And
you should do that with everybody.
It would be great. I don't feel like
if they get to a point being successful. You go to do changes when players are lost.
Right.
And so you got to understand who they are. I don't know. I'm not around the Cardinals and their instruction. You got a new hitting instructor for the organization in Brant Brown. I don't know his philosophies. I don't know his communication style. So I'm not going to put the burdens of the past on the present. I
don't know if we talked about it or not, but when I'm hopeful for Brant Brown, but it's funny you bring in a guy that his big league career was most known for a miscue on the Cubs way back when. I think it was their 98 season that they ended up winning a wild card. I think Brant Brown became the GOAT back when the GOAT wasn't a good thing. When you called someone a GOAT, that was bad. Yeah. Now it's good. You got to keep up with the lingo.
I can't.
I guess. But I'm very curious. I've heard good things. So, I mean, the Cardinals have had a merry-go-round of hitting coaches the last few years, it feels like, and none of them have done that good of a job, right? But I feel like hitting coaches probably get more blame than they deserve and probably get more credit when things are going good.
I would agree with that. That goes with coaching. And again, without knowing the styles or having specific info on a player commenting, yeah, we're not connecting. You never hear that stuff. So it's impossible to evaluate.
Let's talk, before we take our first break, I do want to jump to another topic here. Talk a little bit about what we saw over the weekend from not a recent draft pick, but a recent trade acquisition from late 2023. And when John Mozeliak is gone, Rammer, there still could be some ramifications felt from that 2023 deadline. Mo made a bunch of deals, and none of them have really, I don't want to say panned out yet. There's still time, but I think maybe we thought there might be more of an impact from that deadline. One of those arms could be on the verge of making an impact, and that being Tekoa Roby, who was a top flight prospect, dealt with injuries. I think he's been off prospect radar since, but it was
I believe he's had an elbow and a shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. It was good to see him provide some electric stuff over the weekend. And, much like J.J. Weatherhold, you start to dream a little bit on what a guy like Roby can produce for you. Maybe not right this moment, but hopefully not that far away.
If you're Roby, you're hoping, obviously, you dream of a shot at the big leagues in a spot there. Most projections have him in the rotation at Double-A Springfield. But if you're a competitor like him and to come all the way back from 2 major injuries to your arm and have that kind of stuff in your mind, you've got to say, I'm going to pitch in Triple-A. I'm going to be in that rotation. And so that'll be interesting to see if he can get there.
For a lot of these guys, remember, it does feel like the quicker path to the big leagues would be through the bullpen. And I don't know if it's a product of, again, if the Cardinals deserve, I don't even know if there's blame to hand out, but do you feel like a path to the bullpen compromises a long-term path to the rotation?
There's no right or wrong answer to that. And I don't think that is the best path for the Robies and the McGreeveys and Tink Hence and maybe some others, because I think the bullpen's pretty darn good. And so to bring a young guy up and pitch once a week in a blowout game, I don't think that's the route to go. And I think with young guys, you want to most of the time you want to give them, if they have any kind of a potential starting role, then you want them to start and get innings. You can always go back to the bullpen. And but that doesn't mean you can't do that. Let's say there are injuries and you're doing well and they need a really good arm and I mean, you look at what the Cardinals did 20 years ago, not quite 20 years ago, with Adam Wainwright. And that used to be the way it was. Guys would come up, they'd get their first taste in the bullpen, and then they'd move up as opportunities came along.
Right.
But I think when you've got some of these guys that really have an opportunity in the next, between now and 2 or 3 years, to be a member of your starting rotation, I think you probably want them to start under most circumstances.
And Rammer, I think this is another great case study for what the Cardinals are doing in their minor league organization. Like for a guy like Roby, you said it, the bullpen at this very moment, there isn't a pressing need to bring him up as an arm, like you said, that pitches once or twice a week in low leverage spots. There's no need for that unless you think Roby's a very middling to below prospect. Those are the kind of guys where, okay, let's give him a chance. Maybe he's run out of opportunities at the minor league level. You're trying to find a place for him to land. Like for Roby, if the path, if like what you said, if this guy is somewhere factoring in the rotation down the line, don't you want to stretch him out at the minor league level? And then, heck, maybe there's a spot for him in the big league rotation later this year. But again, need will dictate that. And as of right now, if there isn't a pressing need in the bullpen, I agree with you. Why take him out of a role that you hopefully see him in as at least a middle rotation guy in the next couple of years?
I think what we're talking about applies to Hentz and McGreevy and Roby and Jerpy and probably a couple of others.
Yeah, they're all included on that list, and there isn't a pressing need in the bullpen. But by golly, Rammer, there's going to be another pressing need in the rotation. And that's what's funny about this group and how we're talking at the start that maybe McGreevy's going to get squeezed. Like the starting pitching depth at the big league level for the Cardinals has been compromised for at least the last 3 years. And I think there's plenty of organizational blame to go around for it. But if we want to talk about why this team is in the position that they are, it's because they didn't pay enough attention to the lack of depth in starting pitching talent at the minor league level and not enough impetus to go out and improve your rotation outside of the organization. Ergo, it's what you got right now. They did go out and get Sonny Gray. There's fine, and he's worked out fine. And I don't know what the long-term plans are there. It's not a huge deal.
You did get Gray, Gibson, Fetty, Matz. Now, did you get a Cy Young Award winner? No. We'll see how the young guys progress. I don't know if we have anything more to say. I mean, I don't know who's going to do what, so we'll see.
And I think, in the addition of Matz was sort of early on, and they did go out and get Fetty too, and there's some credit. I mean, they've tried to patch that hole, but I still think it's a glaring hole. And the good news is, like you said, McGreevy, Roby, Hentz, Jerpy, they're all closer. They weren't close last year, other than McGreevy, late. And they weren't close the year before that. And they had nothing. They had nothing ready at the minor leagues. And it forced the hand to go out there and sign guys like Gibson and Lance Lynn. Gibson was fine. Lynn, not so much. That has to start changing, Rammer, for this team to be a contender. And right now, I'd say it's the part of the ball club that I think is most compromised heading into 2025. And we'll see how it plays out. Again, as guys hopefully rise to the top of this staff throughout spring training. It is our Rawlings Redbird Report. It's brought to you by Rawlings and the Rawlings Experience right next door to us here at the Big 550 KTRS. Please subscribe to KTRS TV, like the video as you watch, or just listen if you're checking out the Big 550 KTRS. We'll come back. I want to talk about another guy, Rammer, that I feel like is kind of stuck Luken Baker. What could 2025 provide for the Cardinals' big power hitting first baseman? We'll talk about that next.
And now back to the Redbird Report with Brendan Wiese and Bob Ramsey on the Big 550. Powered by Rawlings and the Rawlings Experience.
It's our Rawlings Redbird Report. Brendan Wiese, Bob Ramsey with you. Glad you're on board, checking us out on KTRS and our KTRS digital platforms like YouTube. Please like the video, subscribe to KTRS TV. That's a big help. And we're just here talking baseball during spring training. And Rammer, I want to bring up a name here right now that we haven't talked about yet all that much in any of our shows, and that's Luken Baker. And at the very least, a bench bat for 2025. But I use this sort of in our description, and I think it's there on the video. Is he stuck in the Luke Voit dimension? And by that, I mean a guy that shows the power is real, and probably the power will play in a lot of different spots. But like Luke Voit, couldn't quite find his footing on the big league club to get an opportunity. Now, again, I don't think there's nothing wrong with Contreras blocking him. There's nothing wrong with Gorman or Walker blocking him at DH. So the question becomes, what is Luken Baker in 2025?
Well, he's a right-handed pinch hitter.
Anything else?
Next topic. I mean,
I don't have any other next topic.
I lost you. What has he earned? He's had one good year in the minor leagues. That was 2 years ago, and it was really good. That was the eye-popping year. You go, whoa, what do we got here? And then that's where the blockage, I think, retarded his advancement a little bit. But you've got a heavy left-handed lineup, which is great, because now when you've got a couple of right-handed hitters off the bench like Baker and Sajasi, now you can have a little balance when there's a tough lefty in there and you want to give somebody a day. So I think backup first baseman, right-handed DH as a backup. I don't think you're going to get a DH platoon and he's going to see every left-handed pitcher. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. Again, it goes to performance. Does Burleson struggle against lefties down the stretch as the season begins? Well, maybe you do get a platoon at DH between Baker and Burleson. But my point is, him being a right-handed bat with power on your bench gives you a potential solution to problems.
Would you agree with me that Baker could have a big spring here and it not matter?
Well, it's all, when you're talking about mattering, you're talking about relativity. What would have to happen elsewhere for it to matter?
Right. Well, I
other
think
guys would have to fail. And could other guys fail? Absolutely. That's why he's got to get in there and grind just in case.
Well, here's a scenario for you, and I imagine, and I think we probably agree on this, but a scenario that could play out that would have a domino effect is if your catching situation doesn't play out. If Herrera and Pages don't work out, do you move Contreras back behind the plate? And if you move Contreras back behind the plate, does first base open up? Or is it mostly Burleson there? If Arenado's still around, you're still probably jammed up. But if Arenado's gone and you have a slightly more fluid situation on the roster, maybe first base is open. And maybe Luken Baker factors in there. That's where spring matters for him if he opens some eyes and hits a bunch of home runs. Hitting home runs down in Florida is not easy. Now, they've moved the fences in a little bit, but if he were to hit 6 or 7 home runs down in Florida, that's more impressive than guys that go out and bash 10 home runs in spring out in Arizona. The ball flies out there. So I think taking Luken Baker's spring, he's a guy that I want to see make some strides in the contact department. Is he able to pull back his strikeouts a little bit? I do think he can factor in, and I feel like he's this commodity, Rammer, that we don't quite have a complete grasp on yet.
I'm not as optimistic as you, which is no surprise. That's kind of how we both look at problem solving. I thought your scenario to get him at first base has a lot of steps to the point where it might even be a little convoluted. I can't imagine a situation where Contreras catches every day. I can't imagine it. And the way they've jerked him around, and if I were him, I'd refuse, quite frankly. Because the Cardinals have told him on multiple occasions now, not verbally, but by actions, which are way more important than words. I know in today's political climate, the catchphrase is, words matter. Well, whatever happened to sticks and stones break my bones, right? No, they don't matter as much as actions. And the Cardinals, in their actions, have told Contreras, we don't want you catching. So I don't see that happening.
And I don't think it would be a scenario where Contreras does anything to warrant that move. And I think there's, whether it's Herrera or Pages, you're right, there's probably enough solutions there where Contreras wouldn't have to move back. And
Jimmy Crooks is right behind him.
And Crooks, exactly. That's potentially another step as well, where he may be the guy. And I brought this up. I think Ben Fred looked at me kind of cross-eyed when we talked about this last year. I told him back in July, move Contreras out from behind the plate. And I didn't fiscally and value-wise, it didn't make a ton of sense because Contreras, Rammer, he's got the most value if he's hitting like he hit last year and he's catching.
Yeah.
You need to be an MVP candidate for your hitting to really reach first base levels. Like, you really have to hit for your bat to carry first base. But if we extrapolate the numbers, Contreras, if he gets 550, 600 plate appearances, I don't know, maybe that's a little too optimistic on my part. But if he gets those plate appearances and he continues to hit like he has in a Cardinal uniform, Contreras' bat will carry first base.
Oh, I don't even think it's a talking point. He's the man. And he averages 120 games a year because of the catching. Now he should be playing 150. There's no doubt in my mind. He's a hitter. He's a leader. Contreras is of every position player, he is the least of my worries. At the very bottom, let's list the worry list and put all the players out there. Contreras is at the bottom. There are no worries. There are no worries.
Who would be at the top?
Well, I don't know if Luke and Baker is at the top, but you got Luke and Baker. Well, Jordan Walker is probably number one. Can he play? Nolan Gorman, can he play? Your two center fielders, can they play? I mean, the list starts, there's a lot on the list. I think that's a pretty easy list to put together.
Okay. I'd say Contreras is not as much a slam dunk for me as he is for you. And it's simply because of his sporadic availability throughout his career. Now, you said it. Getting out from behind the plate, that may solve all those problems. But Contreras is a little older, I think, than people realize. And
he's 32. He should still be 32. In his prime.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not as convinced that's still the case for a guy that has caught. Some of those guys, man, they hit a wall and they're done pretty quick. And that now for some guys, you pull them out from behind the plate maybe before that starts to take effect. But Contreras, if he's healthy, if the bat's still live, man, sky's the limit for what those numbers could be. I'm hopeful. I'm with you. And I think if he doesn't even have to reach his 100th percentile. Contreras I could see him hit 300 and hit 30 home runs.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any question. I think he hits third or fourth for you just about every day. Like I say, I don't know if there's much more to say about it. I'm not worried about him at all. He's going to be in the middle of your order and playing first base every day. Let's go. Let's go play ball.
So to tie a bow around Luke and Baker then, right-handed pinch hitter, it isn't the worst thing in the world. And because, as I just mentioned, first base, it takes a lot to carry that position. Like for Luke and Baker to push somebody aside, not just on the Cardinals, but anywhere, like he has to have superhuman power. You said it. He had his breakthrough season a couple of years ago. But I am so curious, ultimately, what do you think? I'd say if Baker's on the team the whole year, I'd take 200 plate appearances and 10 home runs combined as a pinch hitter and a spot starter.
That's okay with me. I don't know. To project a bench guy, I'm not sure. He's just got to be available and not be a liability. That's the main thing. Be available. Don't be a liability. Produce when you get an opportunity. I don't know. I don't think there's any way that I could guess at what his actual usage will be. So I'm not willing to throw numbers at it. Just be available and produce when you get the chance.
I'm still hopeful. We'll see how it plays out when it comes to Luke and Baker as a St. Louis Cardinal. It's our Rawlings Redbird Report on the Big 550. Brendan Wiese, Bob Ramsey with you on the Big 550 KTRS, on our KTRS YouTube channels as well. Rammer, let's take our last break and let's talk a little bit about this replay system in baseball and how it's going to be utilized this spring after this.
You're listening to the Redbird Report on the Big 550.
Powered by Rawlings and the Rawlings Experience.
It's our Rawlings Redbird Report. Brendan Wiese, Bob Ramsey with you on a Big 550 KTRS TV Rawlings Redbird Report episode number 4. Like our video if you're watching on KTRS TV and check us out. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and you might be listening on KTRS or KTRS.com. That's great as well. Rammer, we're wrapping up the show, and some thoughts on replay review that we're seeing this spring. I saw it utilized earlier in the weekend in the Angels game where there was a challenge on a strike 3 call to end the game. It was challenged, and suddenly the game's not over anymore. And you could see the umpire none too pleased. To me, it could be the best of both worlds because I don't want to lose the human element behind the plate. I don't want it to be a robot umpire calling everything in a few years. But I think if you've got a challenge system in place, it adds a little spice, adds a little of that manager umpire back and forth, which sometimes I think is missing. And I think this could be something good that baseball can add to the equation here.
Well, ball and strike calling had gotten so bad that the industry accepts tricking umpires as a part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And if nobody knows what I mean, it is stealing strikes.
Yep.
Well, you say, oh, he's a good catcher. He's stealing strikes. That means your catcher that the umpires are so poor at balls and strikes that catchers can trick them. That's a problem. And baseball's accepted it. That is a problem. It goes to integrity. So if an umpire gets his panties in a wad because his call got overturned, well, you got to be better. And I've always hated the frame the pitch thing and steal a strike. I just think that's bad for the game and the integrity of the game. So I'm willing to go further. If, underline, italics, quotation marks, if you have a system that's perfect, then that's the system I got to go to.
You would get rid of the human element altogether?
What do you mean by get rid of them? You mean
behind the plate?
You mean firing squad?
No.
What do you mean get rid of them? You got to call safe out. There are the rules you got to call.
Right, yeah,
you got to have a guy there. But if you've got a perfect system calling balls and strikes, I'm for it. No one has indicated anywhere that I've heard that any system being contemplated or being used is perfect.
No, hasn't been one yet. I would. I'd like to see the mix. I'd like to see the human element calling the balls and strikes. You're right. Human element would be there regardless to call safe out. There would be a home plate umpire there in the future. But as of right now, this isn't even being applied in the regular season. Although, Rammer, we've seen baseball do screwy things where they've added rules midstream and acted like it was no big deal. I don't think they can do that here, though.
I agree.
I'd imagine this is going to be vetted in the spring, and maybe we have something by 2026.
They'll do it some more in the minor leagues and try and work out the bugs. I still think the hologram is a better answer, but that's for scientists to talk about.
And by when you say hologram, you mean something that could actually be seen at ballparks?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't just see it on TV. You'd see it there if you were in the front row.
Yeah. You paid $200 for your seats. You want to know what's going on. Why wouldn't you make it that way? Why do you want it to be secret? No. Why would you be against it if it worked, if it was perfect?
Because I like the human element behind the plate. I like the umpire getting into it with the players, with the manager. Call me old-fashioned, but I think that's part of the game that I think you lose a little bit of the personality in the game when you lose calling balls and strikes behind the plate. And I think and there's unintended consequences to all this. And I feel like baseball's gone down this road with a lot of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if, whatever they do with this. But at the end of the day, if it is just automatic balls and strikes, I'm fine with that too. Really, it's where we're probably headed. We're just probably not headed there right this second.
And I want to be clear to you and listeners, viewers. I'm not saying this system is the way to go 100%. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when you have a perfect system, it needs to be considered in that regard. That's all I'm saying.
Bob Ramsey, Brendan Wiese, Rammer, as we close it down here, anything in particular you're watching this week?
I'm watching basketball this week, to be honest, as I'll be on the road. But be looking at box scores and seeing player usage. Because player usage can tell you, if you can read the tea leaves, player usage can tell you what the Cardinals think of a given prospect or players.
That's Bob Ramsey. I'm Brendan Wiese. Rammer, enjoyed it.
You bet, buddy. We'll do it again next week.
That's Bob Ramsey, Brendan Wiese, the Rawlings Redbird Report, powered by Rawlings and the Rawlings Experience, right next door to us at the Big 550 KTRS in Westport Plaza. For Mitch and Lily helping behind the scenes, I'm Brendan saying so long for now on the Big 550.